It develops through a sequence of subtle, early-stage behaviors that gradually destabilize a child's attachment system. These behaviors are often overlooked because they appear minor, situational. From a psychological perspective, however, their cumulative effect systematically alters the child's emotional regulation, expectations of relational safety, and attachment orientation. Early alienating behaviors operate by disrupting the three foundational conditions necessary for secure attachment: consistent access, predictability, and emotional safety. When these conditions are repeatedly compromised, even in small ways, attachment security erodes. One of the earliest indicators is communication interference. This rarely takes the form of overt prohibition. Instead, it appears as inconsistency. Messages are delayed, shortened, forgotten, or filtered. Contact becomes less spontaneous and more controlled. Anticipatory disappointment increases, and the child begins to reduce emotional investment as a self-protective strategy. From an attachment perspective, this is an early withdrawal response rather than rejection. Scheduling manipulation functions similarly. Repeated last-minute changes, ambiguous transition times, or frequent reinterpretation of agreements create unpredictability. Predictability is essential for nervous system regulation. When transitions are unstable, the child's attachment system remains in a heightened state of vigilance. The relationship associated with disruption becomes paired with stress rather than regulation. Even if the parent's behavior during contact remains supportive, emotional cueing is a particularly powerful early mechanism. Children are highly attuned to caregivers' emotional signals, often more so than the verbal content. Subtle expressions of discomfort such as tension, sadness, anxiety, or withdrawal communicate that certain topics or relationships are emotionally unsafe. When a child mentions the other parent and consistently encounters negative affect, the child learns to suppress curiosity or affection to preserve emotional equilibrium. Importantly, no explicit instruction is required. Emotional cueing operates through implicit learning. Over time, the child self-censors to avoid destabilizing the caregiving environment. Statements that frame contact as optional, such as allowing the child to decide whether to attend, may appear autonomy supportive. However, when declining contact is followed by emotional calm, and choosing contact is followed by tension or distress, the child's decision-making becomes constrained. Autonomy is undermined not by prohibition. From a psychological standpoint, this is a form of operant conditioning embedded within an attachment relationship. The child learns which behaviors restore emotional safety. The resulting choice reflects reinforcement patterns rather than independent preference. Narrative framing also plays a role in early alienation. Small, seemingly neutral comments introduce reinterpretations of past events, intentions, or reliability. These comments often lack overt hostility, but carry emotional valence. Because children's autobiographical memory is reconstructive and authority-sensitive, repeated reframing gradually reshapes internal narratives. The child's understanding of relational history adjusts to align with the emotional tone of the primary environment. Partial explanations, vague reasoning, alignment with the emotionally dominant caregiver reduces it. This reinforces attachment reorientation without overt conflict. At this early stage, children typically continue contact with the targeted parent. There may be no visible resistance, avoidance, or rejection. This outward stability often leads professionals to underestimate the impact of these behaviors. Internally, however, the attachment system is already adapting. Emotional expression narrows. Anticipatory stress increases. The child becomes more cautious and less spontaneous in relation to the targeted parent. Crucially, these early behaviors are often rationalized as reasonable parenting practices flexibility, sensitivity to the child's feelings, or logistical necessity. What is missed is their cumulative directional effect. Attachment disruption is not caused by single events, but by repeated interference that prevents relational repair and consistency. From a developmental perspective, these subtle beginnings are the most critical phase. When attachment is destabilized but not yet collapsed, repair remains possible. Once avoidance or rejection emerges, the child's adaptation has become entrenched and intervention becomes significantly more complex. Understanding early alienating behaviors requires shifting focus from intent to process. The question is not whether harm was meant, but whether attachment conditions were systematically altered. These early-stage behaviors do not push the child away directly. They reorganize the child's sense of safety, allowing the child's regulatory system to do the rest. Alienation begins not with hostility, but with hesitation, not with rejection, but with emotional narrowing. And by the time the outcome becomes visible, the foundational mechanisms have already been operating for a significant period of time. Recognizing these subtle beginnings is essential for accurate assessment, ethical intervention, and prevention of more severe attachment disruption later in development.